Welcome to the In Pursuit podcast. My name is Dion Garrett, and this is a podcast dedicated to people who take seriously the call to grow and to become more whole in life. That's what I'm trying to be about, and I want to welcome you to today's conversation as I've got another special guest here with us today. This is Courtney Girding, and Courtney's a part of the Pathfinder community. And we're actually, I think, in our conversation today going to touch on lots of the aspects of the whole life and what it means to pursue it. But when I set up this time with you, I specifically wanted to do it because you are you're a person who's well, I don't even know if it's fair to say, but the bulk of your work is related to at least the presenting part of it is related to the physical life and physical wellness. So welcome, Courtney.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here today. Why don't you just say a little bit about what it is that you're doing right now? And this is a big story. It's kind of got lots of things, and we'll go back. But just right now, you run a business, right?
Yes.
So say more about that.
So we have a women-owned fitness business that we started a few years back. Started kind of in 2020, kind of by chance.
Great time to start a business.
Yes, absolutely. So started kind of with that business focus not in mind, but just to help people. But it turned into a business. So we've had it for a few years. So it's women only. We focus on strength training, form, technique, getting women, young women, older women to lift, get strong, body and mind. We focus on mindset, eating healthy, just taking care of the whole body. Kind of like, at church we talk about the whole life. We try to focus on that during our workouts too as well.
Yeah. So I would love to know, and maybe we can talk about this later, like why specifically the focus on women. But before we get there, I'm curious about your own journey, what brings people to the place that they are. So have you always been a fitness enthusiast? Has this always been a big part of your life, or what does that look like?
No. So I was the complete opposite of that. So life looked a lot different. So that's why I really love working with people in general, but women specifically, because I used to be, overweight and not take care of myself. I didn't eat well. I didn't think it was possible to be able to be fit or become an athlete. Really, even just run a mile seemed like daunting at the time. So I was always just active in high school and played sports. Nothing super competitive. And after high school, when I got into college, that lifestyle kind of took over where we would, go out, not eat well. You're not taking care of yourself very well. So over time, I, had gained about 50 pounds, didn't feel good about myself, was not taking care of myself really in any capacity. So once I started my corporate career, I just wanted to feel better. So a group of us decided to just kind of start like a fun challenge, like a Biggest Loser, challenge, if you will.
Yeah.
So we started just tracking like what we were eating. We decided no more to go out to eat and have, Mexican every single day when we were going out to lunch or, picking up Chick-fil-A in the morning.
Have you seen those stats? Like my kids do this. They're like, with tortilla chips, they're like, you would never go, there's like something on TikTok or, you'd never go into a restaurant and eat like 8 tortillas, but essentially when you're eating a basket full of tortilla chips, that's what you're eating. And they're like, can you believe that?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you just don't stop. You keep going, they keep bringing you more.
You're good.
So you do that every day and then it adds up.
Yeah. I'm curious. So when you said that you weren't the healthiest and you didn't feel good, did you notice like in your body, like you didn't feel good, or was it more, self-concept, self-image that felt bad?
It was really just how I felt on the inside. I did not feel like I was living up to my potential. And I didn't know what that was. Yeah. I just know that I didn't feel good. I didn't feel good getting dressed up to go out. I didn't feel good about myself. I felt like I was doing great professionally, getting started and doing great professionally. But then there were areas of my life that were lacking that I knew I needed to change. I just wasn't really sure how to start. And I never really started with the intention of ever where I'm at now. Like it was never an intention to start a business or run a marathon or any of those things. It was just starting small. Like, how can I get outside and walk my cul-de-sac every night to be able to get more steps? How can I start bringing lunch to work instead of going out to eat every day? It was like those 1% better every day, which is like our motto, one of our mottos now at the gym. But it's that 1% everyday mentality of those small shifts that add up so much. So I can relate to when people are like, I don't know how to start. I don't know what to do. You don't think that you can, but I'm like, you absolutely can change your life. It happens incrementally, but then you look back and you're completely a different person. So I didn't feel good about myself. I started working out, and that was very small. Like I would just go out walking.
But you have a great career. And so I think it's one of the things, to some degree, I think that, I don't know. I think the whole life or well-roundedness is a slightly later in life luxury. Like when you're starting off, when you're in your 20s, you're just trying to get started. And so sometimes you overwork yourself because you're trying to get established in a career, or like this idea of being balanced and well-rounded. Yeah, I think you should be aware of all these things, but there's so many things you're trying to initiate. And so maybe you're working really hard to get your career established, or your relationship life isn't where you want it to be yet. Or in my case, I got married young and I was very focused on trying to build a family and was trying to that took a lot of my energy, and I'm trying to fit stuff in. But at some point you kind of wake up and you look at your life and you're going, hey, this part's going really, really well, but life itself doesn't feel like it's going well. There are parts that are missing. And when we talk about the whole life, it's kind of 6 facets, and you can draw it out like a wheel. And if you got a flat tire on one of those, if one part is not working well, it's really hard to feel good about your life, even if all the other aspects are pretty solid.
I agree.
It kind of catches up with you. And so I hear you saying you had some good things going on in your life. Your career is going well.
Yes.
This physical thing was not going well, and that was the first thing you noticed. So I interrupted you a couple times already, but you started like a Biggest Loser thing and eating healthy.
Yeah. And to your point, I think, when you don't feel good about yourself on the inside, that does, impact other areas of your life and how you show up. Yeah. So I think that's a very important part, is taking care of yourself and feeling good. For me, that's made an impact in every single other area of my life for the positive. So I had a great career and loved the people that I worked with. And so I worked really hard to move my way up, love the people that I worked with. I ended up being at that corporate career for about 13 years. In that time frame, I also got married, as I was still working on myself, my fitness. I actually met my husband at Club Fitness when I started with a gym membership. But I just slowly was making this impact and change. You can
find love at the gym. That's true. It's not just. Okay.
You can. We actually ended up meeting there, but then we started playing soccer together. We were both horrible at soccer. I don't know why we decided to play co-ed soccer at Veta, but we bonded over being terrible at soccer. But, I was making all these changes to my life, slow incremental changes, and I just felt like it was peeling back the layers. At first it was, working on the food, and then working on getting more exercise. And then when I was maybe walking a mile around my subdivision, it was like, can I do 1.25? Can I do 1.5? Can I start to run? So I would slowly add in those, like a little bit of a shuffle, I called it, as you will, because I couldn't run at the time. I was just barely moving, but I would do that for like 10 seconds, and then I'd walk for like 2 minutes. So it was all these like small changes that led up to being able to then run a mile, and then run 2 and run 3, 4, 5. And I did have many times where, I could have given up, because there was a time that I went out on my usual route from my condo that I lived in, and I was trying my best to run, and it was a shuffle, like I said. So I tripped on the sidewalk. I went straight down. I was bleeding everywhere. And at that point, I was like, this is stupid. Why am I doing this? Yeah. Right? Like, what am I doing? And I limped my way back to my condo and realized that I had dropped my keys, had come out of my pocket when I fell. So then I had to go back out, find them, come back. And I think at that moment, I could have been like, this isn't for me. Because I think there's so many
the universe is sending me a sign.
Yeah, like, I'm not meant to do this. Or it's too hard. I just want to give up. It's too hard. But I'm like, I'm gonna go back out again tomorrow. So there were plenty of times along the way that I could have given up and just kept going. So then went on to run, 5K, and then 10K and then decided to do a half marathon. And then it was starting to get pretty serious where I'm like, maybe I could do a marathon. And I was becoming this person that I didn't know that I could have become. So it was like a new identity for me. So then I'm like, if I can run a marathon, then what? Like if I can get where I'm at, then the sky is the limit. Where else can I go? What else can I do? So then through that process, when I started doing the marathon training, I started coaching people myself. So I was volunteer coaching, working with Fleet Feet. So I was helping them run because I'm like, if I can do it, I want to help somebody else that feels the exact same way that I did.
Is Fleet Feet national or is that a local thing?
I believe they are national, but they have like their own franchise in St. Louis.
Yeah.
So it was great to work with them. And I was just doing it on the side of my corporate career. So all the while working my corporate career, going through all this training and then getting married, starting a family. So then we had our son Noah. And then that changed a lot because I was still super active and very healthy at that point. I actually ran a half marathon each of my trimesters. So the last one I ran was about 2 weeks before he was born. So I was like gung-ho.
Ran a half marathon at like 9 months pregnant?
Yep. In January in the freezing cold. And I just wanted to challenge myself to stay active and continue that lifestyle and then say, hey, this is something that I'm proud of, that I can do. This is something that I never would have been able to do back. I worked hard to get here, so I'm going to keep this going. I'm not going to use that as a reason not to do it. I wanted to, continue to challenge myself. So then after he was born, it was a lot more difficult to then implement the corporate job. And even though I loved the people and loved what I was doing, there was like a shift in, is this really what I'm meant to do? That was always my goal, was to move my way up the corporate ladder, so to speak. And I loved the team that I was with, and I had essentially done that. And my goal was, I'm in this great career, making great money, more than I thought that I ever would, doing all these great things, and then here I am with this identity shift of now becoming a mom and then having to drop, my infant son off 6:30, 7 a.m. in the morning and then not get there till 6 p.m. Every day. And that was a challenge. So it was a shift for me to think, okay, what I thought I once wanted, now I'm in this identity shift of, is this really how I want my life to continue? Because if so, I knew I'd be missing out, on a lot of things. So I had to make, some hard decisions. So I did stay until he was 2. But up until that time, I had multiple conversations with my boss and leadership team about maybe leaving and having a lot of, just a tug at my heart to go in a different direction. So I did that for about a year because I thought about it so often.
And maybe we can come back to this later.
Sure.
Those moments in life where you're like, something's got to give, and how you sort through, or at least how you sorted through, or maybe you've seen this in other people as you're doing what you do now. Like, how do you sort through and figure that out? Like, what's going to give? But we don't talk about that now. I'd love to hear just you kind of keep telling your story.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say now I would do that completely differently than I did then. But then I relied a lot just on like my family, on my husband, who he was fully supportive of me leaving, but I felt like I had to get to a place where I was ready. So it took me about a year that I thought about it, and I thought about it at first every once in a while, and then it was like every other week, and then it was every week, and then it was every day, and then it was all day.
Is this thing about leaving, or is this thing about going to,
this is
not
leaving,
knowing what's next?
Leaving the corporate job, just
to do this.
End of story, period. Just leaving because I was like, I'd been there 13 years. I love the people. I was like, this is like what I wanted. And here I am with what I wanted, and I wasn't fulfilled. Yeah. And that's a hard place to be because you don't know what's next. I didn't know what was next. And it wasn't like I was leaving for another job. I just knew that place wasn't for me anymore. And I wanted to figure out what was. So almost allowing my space to figure that out and spend some time at home with Noah on a lot of things that I had missed out on. So that's what I did when I left.
Okay.
And it was, I'd say it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I mean, people ask like, did it feel great when you gave your notice? And it must have felt great. I'm like, I bawled my eyes out that whole day. It felt horrible. It was hard. And I think that's such a great thing to remember is those decisions, like they don't always feel good and they don't feel easy.
Yeah. Why do you think it, and I agree, but for you in that moment, what felt bad?
It feels like you're losing a part of yourself, and which I don't believe is healthy, because for me that meant I was too wrapped up in that being a part of who I was, but it wasn't me, but it can easily become your identity no matter what you're doing. So I just think it was all that I knew. It was my first job out of college. It was the commitment that I made to the time that I was there. It was leaving the comfort of a great salary and a 401k and a pension and all the things that you're told to do.
You did to build up. You're like, I'm not going to, like, I had to build this, and I'm going to
You do.
Just abandon it?
Yeah. It's really hard. And a lot of people don't understand either. So I think I was looking for a lot of validation from other people. So my husband was fully supportive, but I feel like I was asking a lot of the people that were in the same situation that I was. So I was asking like coworkers or my boss, like people that were still there. So how could I expect that they would understand what I'm saying when they haven't made that decision to leave? They're still there, right? So I was looking for that validation from family members or, to make me feel like it was the right thing. But I feel like that just built confidence in myself because I didn't get that. I got that from my husband, but, my parents didn't fully understand, which I totally get. You want your children to, like, you got this great job. What are you doing? And, you're going to go and not have anything lined up. Like, it's kind of crazy. But I saw a vision for my life that was different. And I think some people just can't see it until they physically can see it. And you just have to believe. And I feel like now looking back, that was God leading me. At the time, I didn't know that. I just felt that pull and nudge and tug to go do something different. And I didn't really know what that would be. I was coaching people on the side and helping people. And that was part of my shift. Was I loved fitness and I loved helping people, especially people that came from a place like I did. And I'm like, I don't know what that looks like, but I want to do more of that. Maybe it's just volunteering. I don't know what that looks like, but I want to explore that. And when you're working in that full-time corporate world all the time, and then outside of that, you have a family, you don't have the time to explore that. So when I ended up leaving, it was really hard, and my team and everyone at work was fully supportive, even though I'm sure they thought I was crazy. But it was the best decision I ever made, and I never looked back. I mean, I love the people that I worked with, still talk to them, but I am not the same person that I was when I was there. I'm not the same person that I was a year ago.
Yeah, I'm curious about something that's a little bit more of a detail here, and you can pass on it if it feels like too intrusive. But if you're making good money, I'm assuming like most people, you build your household income and your budget around working, and then you go, I'm not going to work anymore. So like, how did that work? Because I can imagine people going like, I don't have the luxury of doing that. I can't walk away from a job or a paycheck. So how did you make that work? Did you have savings that you went through? Did you downsize?
We had to be willing to make some sacrifices. Okay. And I think at the time, I didn't really realize what that would look like. I was just so focused on making the decision. So there was a shift after I left of like, you go from this, like, getting paid every other week and, you're doing, taking vacations or doing whatever. And then you realize that's not happening anymore. So you have to make some decisions.
The well is dry. What happened?
Right. Yeah. Like, staycation at your house becomes your new vacation. But we had those conversations for a long time leading up. I mean, we had been saving, but the goal was that I knew I wanted to do something in some capacity. Yeah. It wasn't that I just wanted to stay home indefinitely. For a short period of time, I wanted to spend time at home and enjoy the holidays and things that I wasn't able to do before. But
so this is like a sabbatical or something in a time of discovery.
And figure that out. That next. So I did little things afterwards. Like I started teaching some fitness classes and doing things like that, which isn't comparable. It was more just like that filled my heart up to do that and to be of service than it was more about making an income. So we did have to make sacrifices. And it did come down to those hard, uncomfortable conversations where it was like, my husband's great with like finances and planning, and he's helped so much on my journey. He's like, we have to be willing to give. So you can't do the things that you've always done. Are you willing to give up, the car that you bought working this great job, years ago that you love. Are you willing to do this or that? And if you're not, then you're not ready. I mean, you got to kind of rip off the Band-Aid. And I was willing to do those things and have those hard, uncomfortable conversations about spending and budgeting and what does our life look like. And it's funny because now I feel like that's come full circle to where we are now, making those big leaps, because now that I've started a business and we're in that same kind of situation where we want to grow and it's going to require some big growth steps, and that's going to require us making those same type of decisions. Like you have to either go without, you have to be willing to downsize, you have to be willing to get uncomfortable. So we definitely went through a period of time after I left. I mean, we had saved money, but you can't, it wasn't the goal to stay like that forever. It was, what is the plan from here? Yeah. And then it kind of just slowly started. There was a lot of growth that happened.
But things start to materialize. You get opportunities. You make, you start doing some stuff. You teach some fitness classes.
Yes.
Like all that feels affirming as you're doing it. You're like, okay, this is.
I felt like I was on the right path, but not necessarily exactly what I just wasn't even sure what that was. I'm like, but I'm just going to start. I'm just going to start and see where this goes. So I would teach.
It seems like a pattern with you. So, I mean, I'd love to explain that more, of just being like, my body doesn't feel good, I'm going to start. And I think that's a mindset that maybe is hard for some people to get into. I think it's a helpful mindset.
Yes.
But maybe you come by it more naturally, or maybe you learn that somewhere, that's the way you have to do things.
Yes.
I think so often we get, I want to run a marathon. I can never get there. No, I just have to start. I have to be able to shuffle for 10 seconds or 20
That's
seconds.
That's right.
But it seems like with this whole purpose thing, you were taking a similar approach.
Yes. I feel like the person I've become, and every single step along the way, I've built that just day by day, step by step. It wasn't innate in me. It was, I'm not happy where I'm at. I have to do something different. And I feel like the person that I've built myself into, I'm not the same that I was. And also, I grew up, more of like a conservative, mindset. Like, risk taking isn't really in our family, most families, right? Yeah. Like, you want to make sure that you are comfortable and you make a great living and all of those things, like, which are important. Yeah. But I was more risk adverse, definitely. Yeah. And now I have built this other side of me that I didn't know existed that is way more willing to do uncomfortable things. And that's been just little steps at a time. So anybody that knows me now would definitely say I'm more of like the rip off the Band-Aid and figure it out as you go. But that's because I feel like that's gotten me to where I am. Yeah. And if you wait until you're ready, you're never going to do it. You have to be willing to go.
You learned it. So yes. You left your job, took you a while to decide to do that. You had this grief,
for sure.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
You start taking steps. How do you start to run a business? What?
Well, over the course of about a year after I left, I was teaching fitness classes, and then I was doing my running coaching for Fleet Feet and just helping people in general. And I knew that I loved doing that, and I wasn't really sure where that would lead. I was like, well, maybe I'll, become a personal trainer, which I did start to move in that direction. I was like, but I loved working with groups of people. That was always super fulfilling to me, is helping like groups of people, especially people that think like, I can't do this. Yeah. And I'm like, but you can. Like, and I understand, because I think it's easy for people to not believe in themselves when they're talking to someone that's really not had to struggle. Like, if it was always easy for you, to run since day one, and you ran marathons since you were 15 years old.
It's like, just
do
that
sounds
like,
super easy. But if you would see someone's story of like, oh my gosh, like, look at where I was to now where I'm at. And they believe, like, they understand, and they have that belief, that little bit in themselves, that they're like, oh my gosh, if you can do it, maybe I can too. So throughout that time, I was like, let's just see where this goes. And I always was like, maybe I'll be working for somebody else. It was really never an intent to start my own business. until about a year and a half after I left my corporate job, and then just was like, maybe I'll start doing some group fitness classes, because I had taught some group fitness classes, and I was like, well, maybe I could just maybe do this on my own with my own schedule. So that was kind of the goal. So I started planning for that to happen, and I found a space in Chesterfield to be able to rent. And so I was going to start doing that April 6th. I remember the date of 2020 was my date. So I had a website. I had someone put a website together for me. I had like the whole back end of the business. My husband helped me get everything ready so I could launch April 6th. Well, then when March happened, everything obviously went to a halt. So we hadn't rolled anything out yet.
Because it's 2020. This is COVID.
2020.
Yeah.
Yep. So we hadn't rolled anything out yet. So we just had no idea what would happen. And it kind of just felt like, wow, we really did so much work and time and effort, and financially we, set all this stuff up, and then it kind of just went away. And so I, instead of focusing on that, because it would be really easy to focus on being upset about that, I was like, what can we do?
Reading that as like a sign,
Yes,
sign
like,
that
this
I'm doing
isn't
the
meant-
wrong thing.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
For us here at Pathfinder, we had just completed phase 3, our final phase of this big, capital plan that involved a name change. And we did all this external stuff to be like, now we're ready to welcome our community. And,
Sure.
and we had this, this ribbon cutting kind of moment. And that was a week, I think, before, and things were kind of, starting to come up with COVID, and people were getting a little nervous, but it was like a week before things were shut down. And I remember the same thing, just being like, wait a minute, this has been a multi-year journey. We put all this effort into this, and someday we'll come back to it. But it was hard not to read that as some sort of like divine, no, like I'm raining on your parade right now because you're doing the wrong thing.
Right.
So I can imagine that for you and your husband, as you're trying to figure this out and you're starting to take risks, like that could just feel like a closed door, slam door in your face, and you just go, okay, I got to go back to my corporate job.
Yeah. And then you're like, well, now what? But
that's not what you did, apparently.
Yeah. I was like, I focused on like, what can I do rather than what I wasn't able to do. So I was like, I can still help people. And I started doing free parking lot workouts, and it was something that I'm like, I can still help people. We can be outside. We can do all the things that they want us to do.
Were you like stuck in a lease, or did you? You got out of a lease, or?
And thankfully, since we were supposed to start that next month, it was a space that actually ended up. They shut like half the space down because of that, and then they had to close completely because of all of the restrictions. So, thankfully.
So God spared you from that, of being like on the hook for.
There was and I mean, I'm like, if that would have been a month after we had started, think about just even trying to help figure that whole thing out. So thankfully we weren't. It was before that happened, and I just was like, I'll do parking lot workouts, and so we went to LaSalle Middle School, and we went at 5 a.m. And just put it on Facebook and said, whoever wants to come work out, just come. And so it was just women. It was just like, hey, any ladies that want to come work out. I brought my little portable tailgater with my music, and we just would meet up outside 5 a.m. I mean, it was a wild time because we rarely saw a car go by, because no one was really out or driving. So we were
at the beginning of that, I was like, am I allowed to drive? We had our HR director here give us all a letter that we could keep in our cars to say we're required to show up at work, because we weren't sure, like, is it okay to be out? Like, they say we're supposed to stay home, but we felt like we needed to be here at work. And so, it was a weird time.
It was.
Like, I think back at that stuff, I'm just like, gosh, that was not that long ago, but
I know. It was wild. And there was just one truck every day that would drive by on 109 going to work, I guess. And he would honk at us every day because that's the only person we'd see. But we would be outside, and I'm like, hey, whoever wants to come. So we would just do that. And that group started small. I mean, I still have like our picture when we first started. It was maybe like 8 to 10 people. And then we kept that going throughout the summer. And then more people would come, and then it became fall and more people were coming, and we just kept that going. So then when it became like October going into November, they started asking about the weather, hey, if it's going to start snowing, or what are you going to do?
Softies, come on. We're going to be here in the snow.
Well, that's kind of what I said. But I said, there's a pavilion at LaSalle. I'm like, we can still be in a covered spot. And if you guys are willing to be out here when it's cold, so am I. Yeah. But they were like, well, maybe we can find you a place to go because we'd rather be inside. But that was also a hard time to even find a space because most places had shut down. And then even where we were considering going, it's like their capacity, the limitations of how many people versus space, all that stuff. Yep. So through that group of women, someone introduced me to a lady that owns a gymnastics studio in Ellisville. And so she's like, she's got a huge space. You should talk with her. She's great. I think she'd be able to help you get your start if you are looking to get inside somewhere. So I was like, okay, that sounds great. So I ended up meeting with her, talking with her. She was like willing and ready to rent me the space for the first half of the day because her gymnastics didn't start until afternoon and evening. So she's like, you can be here in the morning and through like noon. And so I was like, that sounds great, but everyone's working out for free and I'm not charging them. So I don't know how I'm going to be able to pay you, but she fully believed in us and was like, you'll figure it out. And she really helped us get our start and believed in me. So
that connection just reminds me of something else. There's something I read recently about the strength of weak ties. And it talks about how most of your breaks in life don't come from your immediate close network. Like your best friend isn't the person who's probably going to get you a job at their company. It's the friend of a friend that you barely know.
Sure.
They'd be afraid to ask of a favor because you think, why would you help me? That's the person who is most likely to give someone a break or to create an opportunity for someone. And most of us don't want to ever put upon those people because we don't feel like the tie is strong enough. It's a loose tie. It's a weak tie. But that's where most of the magic happens in life. So it's cool just to hear.
Yes.
It's rolling around in my mind just because I read it like last week.
I agree. And I feel like I try to pay that back now as a business. Like I try to pay that back so much to people who I don't really know that well, that I feel like I can help. So when we started renting space from her, it just kind of took off from there, where we started renting and then having a few classes a day. And it was just me. And again, like we didn't have any money, so I didn't have any trainers. It was just me. So I taught all the classes, got up every day, 3:34 in the morning, taught all the classes.
Ooh, that's like news personality early.
It is, yes.
I get up there right around 5. Every once in a while, back it up to 4:50, and I like it, but.
Yeah, you become a morning person really quick, and then you get home and you want to pass out by 7:00. So, we just started that way, and then we're there about 2 years, and ended up like just growing. And I had one trainer that I ended up hiring after like the first year when I was so burnt out. I was teaching all the classes, and I'm loud. I project my voice a lot, so I then was going to voice therapy. I was losing my voice. I mean, there was all sorts of things that were going on that I was like, I need help. So then I had this amazing community of women, and my first trainer, Amanda, came from that group and was like, I don't know if you need help, but she stepped in and wanted to get certified. And so she was my first trainer that came on board. So it started just with me and then adding her. And then we were there for about 2 years, and then the space on the other side of the building opened up. And that was when we were like, if we want to make that leap and be able to grow, this is how we're going to have to do it. Because people were already asking, like, if you just had night classes, if you just had something after work, I would love to come, but not just in the morning or afternoon, but they also wanted the opportunity to come in the evening. So that was like our big first step, was then moving into our own space, because that meant
a big step.
Yeah, that meant taking out loans and construction. They had to gut the space, like we had to pull permits. It was not an easy turnkey move in. Yeah. So it required some more big steps of faith to say, okay, rip off the Band-Aid and figure it out as we go. So that was also in 2022 when our first, like everything that we had business plans for the business, then cost doubled. And so we took out another loan because to cover the cost of the construction. I mean, it was a rough time, but we decided to make it work, and we ripped off the Band-Aid and we moved into that space and took out the loans. And I just remember like signing my check for my down payment to the construction company. And I was just like sweating bullets and thinking, is this the right, like this is scary. And I pray that this is the right thing, because it's not just me and my life. It's, you know, my husband, it's our family, it's our young son. I mean, they fully believe in me as well, but you're like, I'm hoping I'm leading us where we're meant to go. And they took those, you know, my husband especially took that step of faith too, to say, let's do it. Let's go for it. Yeah. So we did. And we got in the space, and then we just continued to grow. I mean, it wasn't within a year and a half that we knocked down another wall and took over another space that was next door to us. And we've just continued to grow and expand, and more women have come and our team has grown. And it's just been a really amazing journey to see where we are and now how we've grown just as individuals and as a team. And faith has then played part in that as of late.
And that's I'd love to hear that story, because again, one of the things about growing in a whole life or pursuing a whole life is I think you just got to kind of start somewhere. You know, for me, it's either starting with your biggest pain point, like where am I hurting the most? Where's my life feel most painful? And I'm going to move toward that pain, and I'm going to figure out a way to bring some health or growth to that. Or it can just be, you know, it can be an area of strength. I'm just going to focus on this area of life. But eventually, like I think positive change in one area either demands, or it starts to, like in a avalanche effect, a healthy avalanche effect, starts to affect change in other areas. So being a kind of a sociological person, systems theory talks about how, you know, to change an entire system, you really only need to start with one part of the system, and you'll start to create friction positively that will affect change of the whole system. So one of the interesting things that you do, and part of your story, is this starts with fitness, but it doesn't stay there for very long. What you're doing is really much more holistic than that. Can you just kind of speak? And by the way, what's the name of your business is?
CG Squad is the name of our business, and we're in Ellisville.
Okay.
Women only. And we've got as young as 13 and up. So we've got younger women, you know, 13 in high school, and then middle-aged. And then we've got a few really strong, awesome grandmas in their 70s that are stronger than me, which is really awesome.
Yeah. And so CG Squad becomes not just a place where you go to work out, and you're still doing a ton of that, helping people who are either, you know, in their grandmas and they're staying fit, but helping people who are just getting started on the journey like you were years ago. But just talk a little bit about how this starts to become more than a place to work out your body.
It's definitely evolved. And it's funny, like just looking back, how you can be in a place and then you look back and you just see how it all fits together and brings you to right where you are and where God was leading you to be. I just feel like now it's always been about, you know, fitness and becoming the best version of yourself, and not just physically, but mentally. So at the end of every workout, we always have done a mindset chat where we do a cool down and we stretch. And then we have a quote that we put on the door every single day. It's always different. And then we talk about how that quote relates to life. So it's great to work out on your body, but it's important to grow in your mindset. And that's something that I am so I just feel that is such a strong part of being able to grow into the best version of yourself, is when you start to work on yourself mentally, the way you think, the way you perceive things, the way you react to things, having that growth mindset versus scarcity mindset. And I just think if you don't recognize it, it's just so easy to think the way you've always thought and think that's just me and that's just how it is and that's how I'm always going to be.
So is this a mindset that you feel like you've always had, or is this a mindset that developed as a result of some of these
definitely developed changes? So over time, I feel like that mindset, again, just like the step-by-step of running a marathon, it's been brick by brick to be able to build that unstoppable mindset. It did not start out that way, but just by doing and being uncomfortable and recognizing that I can, you know, and then I'm not going to die. It's okay. Like, I'm going to make it. The more that you do that, the more comfortable you become, like taking risk and being able to be like, I can try new things. So that mindset was definitely built. So I want to instill that in other women, people in general, but talk about how your mindset's so important. Just because you've always thought this certain way about yourself doesn't mean that's who you are.
Yeah.
Right? It could be about your faith. It could be about your body. It could be about your capacity to do hard things in life and your career and your physical capabilities. But you build that by shifting the way you think and shifting the way you talk to yourself.
So you integrate this at the end of every workout.
Every workout.
Do people stay or
They do.
Are they? Because I mean, I've been in group fitness classes where it comes to the stretch time and people are like out.
Yes.
You know, they're just like, I gotta go.
Yes.
But
I've loved seeing that evolution because I will say, I think at first, for some people, it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because it tugs at a part of your heart that's speaking to you. And sometimes that's hard to hear. So when we're talking about those mindset shifts and like going through hard things, maybe it's working on your relationship, maybe it's going to see a therapist, maybe it's challenging yourself to run a marathon, maybe it's all these different things. And I feel like for someone internally, there are things that maybe they know that they want to work on or heal, all of those things. And it's hard in the moment to be in that. And it's easy to avoid and kind of want to run away from that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the mindset chat, I feel like for most people, if you're willing to sit in that, is like the best part of everyone's workout. Because whenever any of us trainers are up there, we are all speaking to something different parts of life. It's not just me. It's our other trainers. Other people that are in the group start to speak up about their experiences or shifts that they've had or wins that they've had, or they've done something hard and they want to share with the group, and we pass out affirmation cards. So it's just such a great reminder that we can do hard things, and just because you're somewhere now doesn't mean that you're going to be stuck there forever. So that was always a really important part of the workout. So yes, sometimes I think it's tough to sit in that and actually like let that sink in. But I've seen over time, all the women that we have coming in there, they've changed so much from the inside out just by adopting that growth mindset and thinking, you know, maybe it's, you know, the people I'm surrounded with, right? Because sometimes it's the people that maybe you feel like you've outgrown, or you're not the same person from high school. So if you feel like I need to maybe make some more friends that are like-minded to do things that I enjoy doing or challenge me. You know, I always say the friends that are willing to challenge you care about you so much more than the people that are wanting you to stay the same and be comfortable. So when you have that group of friends or family, and in my case, like our team, we're always getting out of our comfort zone and challenging each other. Like, even though we don't want to be challenged sometimes, it's like, you know, you can do it. And so we're always challenging ourselves, because like we're always pushing those limits, because there never really is a goal or an ending place. Like, you just keep going. So that should last for your whole life.
In the balance of having a community where you feel like you're going to be challenged and you're going to be encouraged to grow, but you also feel known, accepted
100%.
as you are.
Yes.
Like I think often groups get that wrong. They're either these high challenge groups where it feels like if I don't meet my next challenge, I'm out. Like my belonging is in jeopardy. Or they're warm and comfy belonging groups that have no drive, no strive to be like, hey, let's do better. And that the magic of both of those things of going like, hey, you're here, you're one of us, we love you.
Yes.
You're safe.
Yes.
And let's
do some challenging things that get you a little uncomfortable, because when women, and that's what I love so much, is I feel like that's the magic of who we are as a team. Like, we care so much about people. We care so much about our community. It isn't just coming into the gym and hi and bye and you're here for the workout. It's us checking in on you, messaging you, showing up for you at your house, bringing you meals, sending you cards. Like, it's so much more than just the business. It's really not even about the business anymore. It's just about showing up for people and being able to serve. And I feel like being a good disciple, helping disciple others. And I just feel like every day on the way to the gym, I pray just to give me the words to help someone that day, to help me connect with someone that day. It's been amazing. I've been able to pray over people at the gym, going through really hard things. And that was something when the business started, or even a year ago, I would not have been comfortable doing. Like, it wasn't really something that we really talked about that much. We always did the mindset chat and becoming the best version of yourself. And I always believed in God and, had faith and came to church. And then it's just shifted where I just feel like in the last year, and especially like in the last 6 months, and the last year, I felt called to serve on an action team. So that was like kind of step one. And I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was like, I'm willing to do it.
And for people who don't know what action teams are, here at Pathfinder, we get groups of people together for a set number of weeks, short term, but to grow in some aspect of the whole life. And you do that with other people, and so that's what you're talking about with action teams. So
yes. And I just felt called, like, if I can help other people and bring other women just together and support them. So I started the Women in Leadership group last year. And then after that team got started, we had a few members of the gym that were asking, like, where do we go to church? And so,
but first of all, I love that it's not like you're, and this is the evolution of what you're doing. Mm-hmm. It's not just like only women in fitness, which would seem like that'd be your expertise. You're like, women in leadership. This is, and I don't know that that's where you started when you were starting with running and helping other people run and doing group workouts.
Right.
It's like,
it's become so much more than that. Yeah. And that's what's really cool about it, is that it was about helping people get fit. But same thing at the gym. Like, I see all these women getting so strong, but then I see them shifting in their life and their personalities. Like, they're just shining because they can come in when they first start and you just see that they're dimmed for a multitude of reasons. But when we get to see that light and just them showing up fully as themselves and seeing our community, giving us hugs every day and being so excited to come in and being able to connect, that's such an important part, is that connection. So much more even than the workouts. The workouts are great, but it's just become so much more than that. We love our community. We love connecting. We love getting people together. And so it's really just evolved from first being fitness, and now it's so much bigger than that. So
so you're talking about Women in Leadership Action Team, and then and what that's led to.
Yeah, that's led to just being more intentional about my faith. And it's funny looking back, I thought, I go to church, I believe in God. I didn't really realize there was a deeper relationship that I was missing out on with God and with my faith. And I feel like there's a lot of people that are probably in that spot and they don't really realize it, because I know I didn't. I always went to church and believed in God, but I wasn't allowing God to lead my life. I was leading my life. And on Sundays, I got a great message, but during the week, I wasn't allowing God to lead. I wasn't allowing him to lead my day and my actions, or even take a look around at what was going on around me that he might have been showing me, because I was so laser focused on, this is where I'm going, here's what I'm doing. It was more about me without really realizing it.
And maybe this isn't a fair question to ask, but do you feel like in those moments it was it about like an unwillingness to let God lead, or was it like just, I don't know how, I don't even know how, I don't know what that
I didn't
means.
even know how, and I didn't even know it was possible in a way. But I had never really read the Bible, like in an entirety, but even just at all, really. I wasn't soaking up God's word and allowing him to have a relationship with me. But I didn't realize I wasn't doing that until I started coming into church and then being more intentional. We just started having these great conversations about maybe reading the Bible more, maybe starting like a devotional. I remember when our team went to Michigan, we ran a half marathon together. And
great place, by the way. That's
beautiful place. Yes. And we go there every year. Yeah. And we run a half marathon together. And I just remember that as a team, we were like, the race was on Saturday. We were leaving Sunday to go back, and we're like, we need to find a place to go to church on Sunday morning, which on vacations, I really never thought about going to church. So we all went as a team, and it was funny because the race packet pickup was held at a church. So we were like, perfect. It was in Douglas, Michigan.
Here's one. Yeah.
And the people were
by Saugatuck.
Yes, that's where we ran. And so we went to that service, and it was so in alignment with where we were in our life and talking about being in alignment with the right people and allowing God to lead. And I just remember all of us were like, wow, that was such a great message. And it really resonated with all of us. And then from there, and even like the giving and this whole unraveling of the layers, I just remember even like we weren't members of that church, nor did we know anybody, but we were all like, we all need to financially give, like more than we would have ever done. We were just like letting go of allowing God to lead and saying, you know, this is a gift for you, and we'll be okay without. Yeah. You know, because I feel like in life you can just get so comfortable putting that last and taking care of all the other things first. Yeah. So after that, we started going to church together. There's a group of us that go to church together, and we all go to church, some of us here, some of us other places. But we had some of the girls at the gym just ask, like, you know, where do you guys talk about it sometimes? Because in our mindset chat, then we would start kind of talking about the message. If it were to hit with like the quote we were talking about, we'd say, you know, we heard on Sunday this great message, and we'd talk about that, and we'd all use our own personal experience and talk a little bit about our faith. So we just started organically and naturally talking about it. And then so we had some of the girls ask us where we went to church. And so it's been really neat to see, because now we've got like 2 pews and growing of people, which is so cool. And just this amazing growth in other people that I just feel like sometimes people come in and they're like, you know, to our whole team, but they're like, you guys have such a light, and we love the energy and being around you. And I know that comes from knowing God. And that's always been like, yes, great energy and all of that I've had, but truly pursuing a relationship has just allowed it to shine even more. So we started coming to church, you know, every Sunday, but not only that, getting to know people at church, staying and talking to people, making new friends, being open to where God was leading me, praying every single day before I got my day started, which I never really did, allowing him to be the focus of the day.
Yeah, and what do you attribute that? So this, because I think that's an area where people hear Christians talking, and even Christians hear other Christians talking about some of the things that you've said, and they feel kind of fuzzy, or they feel like platitudes, or they just feel like churchy sayings. You know, it's who sang "Jesus Take the Wheel"? Was that like Carrie Underwood or something?
Yes,
but I mean, it's just kind of like, okay, like, I mean, take control of my life, and like people, like, I think we kind of nodded that, and we're like, okay, like what? I don't know what that means, and I think there is this. I don't know if it's a self-consciousness or a dishonesty, and I don't mean like a malicious dishonesty in the Christian community, but I think there's this stuff where we talk about these things, and we all kind of say these things, but we don't really know what those things mean or what they might actually look like. Sure. We just know that's what Christians are supposed to think or say, but we don't actually know. Like when we say that Jesus is Lord, or we pray Lord, that means that first of all, he's King, he's over everything. And that's also a declaration of, and I'm submitted. And I think we maybe want to be there, but we just don't even know how to do that. We don't know what that looks like. And so I know that there are lots of, in my work especially, I see lots of people who can spend a lifetime sincerely in church pews and seats, listening, and never knowing what else or how else to do it. And it's not for a lack of sincerity or it's just like, I don't know what. So I'm always really curious. You know, for me, my path is different. Some of it is I've given before I probably knew what I was getting into. I gave my life over to this work, and this work demands me to, you know, live a very, maybe not. Maybe there are people who do this work and they're not in the same place that I am. But you know, my work is to yield to God and to listen to God and to follow the lead of God. And so I've got an advantage there. So I'm very curious whenever someone whose work is not primarily, I need to grow closer to God, learn how to listen to God, be more yielded or surrender to God, someone who's trying to start a business and to help women in their fitness and to help them grow as leaders. Like, I'm really curious that path of how does someone go from, I'm a Christian, I go to church. Like, how do you open up that other door, or what opens up that other door?
I feel like when,
at least for you,
I talked about building just those step by step, whether it's running a marathon or building a business or building in that mindset. I feel like with faith, it's been that same way.
Okay.
Where I also feel like we all started to say, let's read the Bible together. That was a huge step. Because
did you start like in the Old Testament at the beginning, or?
Yes.
Okay.
We started with, yes. So as a team, I just said, I think I'm going to read the Bible this year, because I had a friend that read the Bible last year and I was intrigued by that. And I'm like, I've never done that. And my husband's very knowledgeable in the Bible, and he's always, I feel like, and Noah, my son, is very knowledgeable because he goes to school at St. John here. So I felt like they would have all these great stories, and I was like, oh, tell me more, because I wasn't aware and I didn't know a lot of the stories. And my son, who's just turned 9, had all these great stories and knew more about it than I did. So I just made me curious to think, that's something I should do. So when I mentioned reading the Bible in a year, the group that I'm with at CG Squad, they're like, we would love to do that together. So then on to that, there's a few more other ladies that were like, we'd love to do that too. So that was another layer of starting to read the Bible. I feel like that has opened up a whole new kind of world for me. And I don't know what I was expecting, but when I started reading the Bible, I when you start from the beginning, there's a lot to that. And I don't know, you feel like, oh, maybe I'll just start with inspiration from the very beginning, but it's kind of the opposite. But it teaches you so much, because so much of what you're going through in life, it's already there. There's stories in the Bible, and having that knowledge, I feel like, has really deepened the relationship. And not only that, the messages at church, because hearing the messages are great, but when you start speaking to the scripture and then you understand the context on a deeper level,
like, oh, okay,
it makes a lot more sense. Like, who knew, right? So that was another step for me. And I just feel like simplifying our life to making the main thing, putting God, family, and business and all the other things should not come in front of God and family. And I feel like we're in such a society where it's, who can win the rat race, who can make the most money, who can buy the most things. And you're in that and you don't even realize sometimes that you're in it. And you have so many obligations. And I just feel like you end up doing so many things that you don't even really enjoy, or the people you are around. It's just been simplifying. Like, it's been taking away all those layers. It's been spending more time at home than going out. It's been removing alcohol. It's been there's just so many things that we've done the work to say, let's, keep our focus on God and our family and serving. And I feel like that's helped in my mindset with the business, because as much as I want to help all of these women, it's not just on me to carry that and to do that and to make those decisions, to say what is next, because we have a lot of really big plans and visions. And I feel like for a while I knew what that would look like, and I wanted it to look a certain way and knew where we were going and the building that we were going to buy and all these things. But I've relinquished that control to God to say, wherever you're leading me is going to be better than the plan that I have for myself, and praying that He leads every day and that I follow, and that I'm not stuck in, here's what I think we should do and here's the place. And I just pray every day, every morning, show me the place, the people, the purpose, the path, and I'll follow.
And especially, so I'm curious about this too, being a person of strong determination like you are, how do you in a day, you pray that prayer, how do you distinguish between the voice of your own self-determination and the direction of God. Those things can feel like they can get messy, right?
Sure. And
especially if you're persistent, you fall on your face while you're trying to run and you lose your keys and you don't take that as a sign of I need to give up running. Like for a minute you do, but you're like, no, I'm going to keep on. So, as I was saying before, that you can encounter roadblocks in life and start to look up into the heavens and say, all right, God, are you redirecting me? And sometimes God does redirect us in those ways. Other times there's a call to persevere. No, this is just a setback and keep pushing through because suffering produces perseverance, character, hope, and hope doesn't disappoint us, as it says in Romans. So I'm curious for you, and again, just for people who are hearing these words, and I love your example because this is something that you're recently discovering and you're helping other people do it. So that's why I'm probing this. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, sure.
But I'm curious, like just in a day, how do you sort out the leadership of God and your own inner leadership, your voice of strong self-determination and will? Like, how do you have any thoughts on that?
I feel like I'm much more open now to what he's placed in front of me.
Okay.
Whereas before I was more closed-minded to where my focus was at, and it didn't allow me to see the full picture. And what I mean by that is in the morning, every day when I pray, and I pray out loud, I do it every day.
Which, by the way, praying out loud is awesome.
Yeah.
Like I think
I just do it in my car on the way to.
I think it's a great way to pray.
Yeah.
Because for me, it took me forever. It seems like reading out loud, like when you're a kid, that's like the inferior way to read. I also like reading some things out loud. And like poetry should be read out loud, but there are other things that should. But praying out loud, that I was slow to that because I thought it was like an inferior way to pray. But praying out loud helps me keep my focus. It helps me remind me that I'm actually talking to someone. These aren't just thoughts.
Right.
I'm actually in a conversation, in a relationship anyway. So,
I agree.
Yeah,
and it's funny because now as a group, we pray out loud. Like our team, whenever we go out for a meeting or we have lunch, that was something that we never would have done before, but we're intentional to be together as a group and to pray. And even at the gym, sometimes when someone's having a hard time, I ask if it's okay that, we could say a prayer together when they ask for help with something. And I believe in those moments, that's when I'm asking God, like, help me have the words, because sometimes it isn't me. I feel like he steps in, right? Sometimes you need his help. So every morning when I pray, it's just being open to the path. And sometimes that's hard because you might have an idea of where you think.
I got an idea every day about how I want my day to go.
Exactly.
I'm just like, I've got this, I've looked at my calendar, I've got it planned out. It took me a lot of effort to plan it.
Yes.
And to make everything fit. And I'm like, here we go. The plan is set. It's right here in my.
And it's that mindset shift too, that it doesn't always go the way that you think, but how instead of thinking about, like it snowed and now school's canceled and all these things I can't do that I thought I needed to do. It's like, well, what did that open up? Maybe that allowed you more time with your kids. Maybe that allowed you to do something at home that you would have been too busy to do otherwise if your schedule was so jam-packed the whole day. So I feel like when I started day with prayer and being open, it's opened me more to people all around me that are searching for something. And I believe it's faith and struggle. And I've been able to be that for them in those times, whereas I may not have had those moments. So I feel like it's made so many more intentional conversations. More than anything, it happens every single day for me that I would have not had the type of conversations that we're having now at the gym, outside of the gym, meeting new people. It's just, he's opening all of these doors, I feel like, and I'm just willing to walk through them and get uncomfortable sometimes, or say, and we do have an idea of where we want to go and what we want to do. And I also say, pray that prayer. I do have an idea, but, I want you to lead me. So I'm open to other things. And I do believe that he's leading us in that direction. And it's not the timing. I feel like even a year ago, I knew where we wanted to end up and what building we wanted to buy. But I feel like that didn't happen because he's like, you weren't ready. You weren't ready mentally. You weren't as strong of a faith-based leader as you needed to be. You needed to put me first in front of all these other things. So I feel like in his timing, it's all worked out the way that it should and will continue to. And it's just helped me shift my mindset to when I'm even having conversations with people, even if it's a hard one or it's something that doesn't go the way that we think that it should, or in business, or we share spots with other places and there's parking issues and things that people get so, worked up about things that I'm like, it just has calmed me in ways that I'm like, how can I help somebody? How can I meet them where they are? How can I be a disciple to them in that moment? And maybe that's just in the way that you're treating someone, or you have kindness, or you help someone, you say a kind word to a stranger, and it's not disingenuous. It's just, you're just filled with a light and a love that I feel like you don't know until you feel it.
Yeah.
And it changes you.
I appreciate the reminder that as we're looking for God's leadership, it's not all what he's going to, beam into my head or my heart directly. It's the awareness of what he's doing around me. It's allowing myself to be interrupted. It's allowing him to speak to me through other people or opportunities or situations. Because I think, again, and certainly there are moments in my life where I go off and I silent retreat and I'm with God and I'm looking for direction. And there have been moments where he's given me direction. But I also think we, in our individualistic culture, sometimes forget that, if I'm looking for the leadership of God in my life, I have to listen and notice and pay attention to what God's doing around me. I feel a little convicted about that. So that's good. That's good.
And he's doing that every day. I feel like I'm nowhere near where I need to be, but there's been such a drastic shift. And it's just happened over all these things. It was leading an action team. It was being more intentional about going to church. It was being intentional about praying outside of church or outside of just before a meal at dinner time. It was being intentional about leading the team and doing it in a faith-based way and sharing my faith. It was inviting people to church. It was...
Yeah, which I love that part, by the way, because going to church with other people is so much more fun.
Oh, we have a blast. Sunday's my favorite day of the week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys look like you have a blast. Like
we do.
When you say you got light or energy, you're a pretty vibrant group.
we still go work out before church, and then we get coffees, and we come in here, and then we have this, we go to breakfast as a group, and we've invited like all these people from church that we didn't know before. So it's like become this whole like Sunday thing. And we have a room that they save us at the restaurant that we go to. And they're like, eventually you guys are going to be, I remember on my birthday, which wasn't that long ago, it was my favorite birthday I think I've ever had, because I didn't want anything. I just was like, if you guys would come to church, even if church isn't your thing, meet us at breakfast or come to church. And we had like 3 or 4 pews of my friends and family. And then we all went to breakfast, and it was so cool to be able to be, and I'm like, God has done so much in my life and in my family's life. And just to see that with other people and how it's brought other people closer in their own relationship to God, or maybe for them, it's that first step of just being comfortable coming into church, or just being comfortable joining the action team that I lead, because you're surrounded by such amazing, like-minded women and individuals. And I love being around people that have that growth mindset in every area of your life. And I try to look at that in my faith too. How can I be growth mindset in my faith? Because I don't have it all figured out. And it is hard sometimes to, discern, or is he speaking to me? Is he not speaking to me? What does this all mean? But be in the Word, read my Bible daily. Those steps have just helped me grow as a person, as a Christian too.
Yeah. And again, I just want to call out, and I love your focus on, don't get too far ahead of myself on all the things that I could do or need to change. Just like, what's the one thing, the 1%, what's the one thing I can do today that I can show up differently in a healthier way. And I'm so drawn to your story for a couple of reasons, just about like how the doorway for you for a lot of this was going like, I need to do something about my physical health.
Right.
Like I need to do something. Like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to do something. And then that sets you on a different path vocationally, relationally, spiritually, financially, like in every aspect of your life, mentally, like this becomes a transformative thing. And again, I think from a systems standpoint, and I just think this is how God works, it's just like, hey, just take a step in a direction towards wholeness or faithfulness, and you'll see the next step. And not only that, but
Yes.
but there's this effect, I don't know if it's a ripple effect or there's this kinetic effect of just energy in one direction kind of creates energy in multiple directions. And those things don't often stay siloed. I guess you can really work hard to keep those things siloed. And I think there are people who over focus on one area of their life and they have like blinders on. They won't let it
Right.
affect anything else in their life.
Right.
But I think more often than not, sincere people who just want to grow, like just, that's what we say here. We're like, just pick an area, pick an action team. Don't get like loaded down or bogged down by the 55 different action teams that we have and where do you need it the most. Just do something.
Right.
And if you take a step towards growth, it'll probably lead to other growth. And the other thing that I think is really important, especially for primarily an American audience, is that for us, we have become so disembodied. And I think this is why the physical is important. Even those who pay attention to their physical bodies, it's almost like they don't realize that we are integrated beings,
Right.
that we're created body and then spirit and all of that's together. And so we
Yes.
so often, even when we want to grow spiritually, we're just like, all right, spiritually, and
Right.
you're like, but it's also the body. And so I really do think that any great way to begin growing and changing, if you can get in your body and move your body a little bit, it's not just your body. It really is your whole being starts to change, and it changes a lot. And so, and I just love that, like your story is a testimony of that.
It
That
does.
it started with the physical, but it never just stays there. And some of that is the physical is the key to unlocking greater healing and growth potential in our minds and our spirits and everything else.
Well, to that point, you shift, like you said, in your energy when you start to move and feel better. I mean, even before anything that I do that I feel like I need to show up as my best self, I do a workout first because I know my endorphins are going to be going. I'm going to be feeling good. I'm going to show up with great energy. I could be having a really bad day, and I know that's the last thing that I want to do is go for a walk or lift or whatever I need to do. But it never fails that that's the one thing that I need to do the most. So it shifts your energy. And a big thing for growth in the last year for me has been relinquishing control. I even have it on one of my bracelets, which is a reminder that I am not in control, and it's allowing God to take control. And I feel like we want to have control over every aspect of our life. We have such this tight grip, and I mean
and
financially.
It's miserable. We think it's going to
Yeah.
keep us safe or make us happy, but it is a miserable way to live. Which
It
I'm a
is.
control freak, so I fight this. I fight this daily.
I clearly am not, but it is a way to, I just like the reminder of, even with giving, I just feel like our family has just shed so many layers of being like, we just don't need, when you have that feeling of knowing you have everything you need and you don't need or want for anything else, like you're just so fulfilled, because otherwise you're on this ladder of it's never good enough and you need more stuff, you need more things, you need more money. And then you think, oh, when I get all of that, then I'll give, then I'll do this, then I'll do that. But we've adopted that mindset of how can we give back more and how can we give to other people? And we love to joy people. We do the Joy FM all the time. My son, that's like one of his favorite things to do is
Which is like you do kind of random acts of
random
kindness.
acts of kindness,
Yeah.
and just that mindset of we have everything we need. And if that meant in order to help serve more people, we needed to downsize in our house, or we needed to get rid of a car, or whatever we needed to do, like we're just at that place where we would be willing to do that, knowing that that would just come back tenfold in the way that we feel. And like in one of your,
it's enriching.
yes,
Yeah.
in one of your messages, it's like, it doesn't always come back in the way that you think. It's not that you give financially to be blessed financially. It will show up in other ways, in richer relationships, It shows up in your relationships with your friends, your family, with God. It just makes life more meaningful. And the more that we've...
Holy cow, look at someone's listening.
Yeah.
Sometimes if they're
Yes,
speaking,
we
you're
do.
like
We
is
do.
anybody listening? But
yes, our whole team's always like, that was, but because it makes so much sense and we love it so much because I'm like, we get it. Like we're living that every day, and we are all in that mindset. And I think just having that group around you that if you can have some like-minded friends that you're on the same path and have those great conversations with, it's like, we can go without. How can we give more? How can we do more? How can we serve our community? How can we give more to the church? How can we volunteer? Thanksgiving, we decided we're going to just volunteer and serve people all day. And we just decided to do it. And we hosted it at my husband's business. And that was like our favorite Thanksgiving ever, is because we just showed up and we served people and we delivered meals, and it just fills you in a different way. It's fulfilling and brings life to you when you can give back and relinquish control and allow him to lead.
Yeah. Now, before as we're kind of wrapping up, the evolution is not done with what God's been doing through your life and your business. So I know you've got some plans on the horizon. I don't know how comfortable you are speaking just about what you see at this point, but this thing that God led you on a few years ago, starting in a pandemic and maybe a little before, it continues to evolve. And what is it? Just even, you can be as general or specific as you'd like about what you see next for something that started primarily as a way to help women get physically fit.
Yes, it's just so much more about how to help serve others, and not only the members that we have coming in to help them physically and mentally to grow and to become strong. But I have loved pouring into other women who are starting their own businesses, who are currently in their own businesses, how to help them become the best leaders that they can be. I mean, these are all things that I love doing that are like volunteer time giving that I love doing, is helping other women and men, but primarily women that I work with and see every day. How do you help people grow? And that's been something that almost incubating those businesses. And I see us being in a space to allow others to grow in all different ways. So I see us still having like the gym and helping people grow physically and mentally, and also being able to have a place where people can meet and have community, stay after class. We could have Bible study. There's so many things that we want to do. And then a space where we can help incubate more businesses and ideas and growth in every aspect of life. So it's going to be really cool to see where he leads us, and we're along for the ride. So we're excited to see where that goes.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, it sounds to me, we talk a lot here or on staff about how the world needs churches more than ever, like churches who are doing what churches should do, which we here at Pathfinder talk about bringing together imperfect people in pursuit of a whole life. And that bringing together thing, like there just isn't much in our world today that's bringing people together for good. There's things that are bringing people together to, share anger or outrage or, like for evil or harm. There aren't very many things that are bringing the world together for good. So as you talk about what God's been doing through your business and what you see on the horizon, in a lot of ways, like I hear you describing something that I'm like, that kind of fits the definition of church in a lot of ways. It's this community of growth, and it's open and it's inclusive, but it's also anchored in something that God wants for people. And I think some pastors would feel threatened by that. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love that. I just love that that God is opening up doors to bring people together around different presenting needs.
Yes.
But to grow in a holistic way.
Right.
And it's not a bait and switch thing. It's not like, the physical, we just do the physical so we can reach spiritual. It's like, no, God cares about it all.
Yeah. And it's meeting people really where they are and being open to help just be the best version of yourself to help guide others and help serve others. And I feel like that's what we're meant to do, is help and serve. And I hope that we can be good stewards of that as a team and as a business and as an individual. So I'm excited to see where he leads us and where we go from here.
Yeah, I want to give you because I said we would get back to it, and I think we've answered this question probably already. But the question of you knew way back, you knew that something in your life had to give. Have a career, physical health doesn't feel great. You've got a son, like something has to give. How do you know in life? How do you make that decision of what has to give? Maybe you feel like you answered that already, or is there anything else that you'd like to say to someone? Because I think a lot of people are in that situation. There's this burgeoning sense of like, I can't spin all the plates, but what can I change?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like when we're at the gym and we are talking to like that mindset chat and that quote, it's like, what is the thing that comes to mind that you're struggling with the most? And sometimes it's giving up control over that situation where you feel like it could be a relationship and you have a lot of pain in that. It could be that you need to peel away those layers and go to therapy and start there. And instead of keeping that comfortable chaos going of this has just been working, it's starting to dismantle that and say, how can we make this better? Or it could be someone's story is similar to mine where it's more like, I don't know if I'm in a career doing what I'm meant to do, or I don't feel like where I was isn't where I am now. And, I always say what got you here won't get you there. So it's dismantling that to say, where am I with that? And how can I start to take steps? I always say you could always volunteer, do something that fills you up. Like start doing something that's going to make you feel fulfilled and good. And if you don't know what that is, you could join an action team. You could just start with doing something kind for somebody else. I mean, I've always been someone that's volunteered and helped. I used to do equine therapy and help out kids and be able to lead them and help them. And it gives you joy to give back to others.
And I think that's a misconception. Yes, you're right on. I think a misconception people have when your life feels full is I can't do one more thing. But the right thing will really be additive. And it'll give you joy and energy for the rest of it. And if you try something and it doesn't, it feels heavy, then you probably haven't found the right thing. So you can try something else. But I do think sometimes it's just this, no, I've got to subtract. And maybe that's true. And if you know what that is, be bold and subtract. If you're struggling, maybe it is just not committing yourself wholeheartedly, but trying out something that may actually add.
And I think sometimes we're too busy doing the wrong things. And we don't really know that it's all these things that are keeping you stuck in the same place. So when people are like, I don't know if I have the time to do X, Y, Z or come in to work out, I'm like, well, if you're looking at your habits, like, are you spending 3 hours at night scrolling on your phone or watching TV? Or are you spending your time after work going into happy hours and doing things that you really don't want to be doing? And you're committing yourself to these things that are not leading you to who you're meant to become. Like, are the habits and things that you're doing every day, are they leading you to that person you want to become? Or are they leading you farther away from that person? And simplifying.
And I imagine people are like, I mean, in my life, sometimes I'm like, oh, but at the end of the day, I'm just so tired. And you're like, yeah, but there are certain things. There's certain things that if you structure your life a little differently, that will actually give you more energy. And that's hard to believe. It is hard to believe. But it's true.
It is really hard to believe. It's like, it's hard to believe that, getting up super early, if that's the only time that you have, gives you more energy throughout the day to show up as your best self, but it does, and you don't know until you try or you find the right community, or maybe it's, joining an action team, but doing things that being around like-minded people. And I do feel like when you do give back to others and in service, it fills you up in a way that other things can't. And I just feel like for us, it's been more simplifying our life and being intentional about our yes. So instead of saying yes to everything, because I used to be that person that said yes to a lot of things, it's being more intentional about what you say yes to and being okay, not being invited, being okay, not being included anymore in the things that you feel like aren't meant for you anymore, so that it gives you more time back to be able to be intentional about growing into the person that you want to become and doing things that align with that.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Courtney, thanks for joining me and for joining our podcast this session. If people want to find out more about CG Squad, what is their website, or for women? I should say women.
Yes,
if you want to find out more.
Yes, and it's actually neat because we have a lot of programs for younger women too. So we work with even like elementary school and up. So we've got some programs specifically for them. And then at the gym, ages 13 and up, that they can lift with us and be able to work out with us. And we are in Ellisville. And we have an Instagram page, CG Squad STL. Okay. And that's where they can find us. But we always
Instagram. And then you're involved in some action team stuff here. And so, I've said this, I'll keep saying this, that if you're in St. Louis, you don't have to, if you're just a growth-minded person, you don't have to agree with what we believe about the Bible, about Jesus, about anything. You don't have to be a particularly spiritual person at this point in your journey. You're welcome to be a part of any of these action teams. And so we would invite you to check out some of the action teams. And you can even look, if you connect with Courtney today, you can look for her name behind some of those teams and join in. If you're also just looking at a place to start, because we talked a lot today about just start somewhere. Mm-hmm. There's a free whole life assessment. It's pretty simple, but it starts to get you thinking about the areas of your life that might merit some attention. You can find that whole life assessment at pathfinderstl.org/whole life, or you can go to the podcast website, which is ippodcast.org, the In Pursuit podcast, ippodcast.org. Regardless of where you are in your journey, I want to thank you for joining us today. And I want to encourage you, as we've just talked today, take a step. You might be surprised what happens after you just take one. God bless.